I am the stepdaughter of the Booths. After my stepfather and birth mother died, I was raised by the younger uncle of the Booths. He took care of me for 6 years, and I loved him for 6 years too. I carefully guarded my secret, thinking I was hiding it well. But when I was kidnapped, my uncle gave the kidnappers double the ransom. Because the female secretary brought out my diary and suggested to him to pay more ransom to help me get rid of those filthy thoughts. I was tortured and abused by the kidnappers until I was almost broken, and I dare not love again. My uncle, with red eyes, begged me, "Emily, don't leave." On the day of the Booths Group annual meeting, the kidnappers threw me in front of the company building. Countless reporters swarmed around me, live broadcasting the scene instantly, making me the #1 trending news, the stepdaughter of the Booths, pale-faced, vacant-eyed, dirty all over, seemingly mentally deranged. I lay on the empty ground outside the company, staring blankly at the sky, as if none of this had anything to do with me. Reporters kept thrusting their cameras on my face, and people maliciously speculated that I, the stepdaughter of the Booths, was arrogant and bullying, and that's why I was retaliated against. But being kidnapped by the kidnappers for a month must have been hell for her. If it were me, I wouldn't have the face to live anymore. But this is the price she pays for bullying others. I listened quietly to people discussing me, without a word of defense. Suddenly, exclamations were heard, and Jack's handsome face appeared in front of me. Seeing me in such a state, Jack's eyebrows furrowed, his aura turning cold and fierce. He pursed his lips, took off his suit, and covered me with it. "Emily, I'll take you home." I nodded, got up from the ground, and limped towards the black Maybach in the distance. The wounds on my feet tore open again as I walked, and red blood blossomed on the beautiful marble tiles in front of the company entrance. Seeing this scene, Jack frowned tightly. I smiled. "Do you think I'm too pitiful? But isn't all of this what you arranged? Isn't this what you truly wanted? Actually, you should be happy. After going through hell, I have finally accepted my identity and completely eliminated those filthy thoughts." "Jack, you got what you wanted." Jack came forward, picked me up, and carried me towards the car. I looked at him so close, but I no longer felt as joyful as before, just calmly lowered my eyes. In the car, I sat obediently. Jack, somewhat annoyed, adjusted his tie. "Emily, how did you end up like this?" I lowered my head, looked at myself, the clothes and hair that had lost their original color, the limbs full of wounds, and the bleeding feet. This appearance would startle anyone. But why did I end up like this? After I was kidnapped, the kidnappers only intended to ask for money and let me go, but when the kidnappers called Jack for ransom, the secretary brought out my cherished diary, revealing my feelings for Jack. She suggested to Jack to pay more ransom to help me get rid of those filthy thoughts. After a silent moment, Jack agreed. I listened despairingly to the voice on the other end of the phone. The voice that used to bring me comfort now made me feel cold all over. The group of kidnappers received double the ransom, and they were thrilled to a point of no return. After hanging up the phone, they increased their brutality even more. I was forced to bloom in that hopeless night. All the goodness crumbled. It was from that moment on that I realized clearly. I was just a worm around Jack. As long as he didn't want it, I was nothing. All my self-righteousness over the years was nothing but a joke from beginning to end. Seeing that I didn't say anything, Jack impatiently said, "Do you know today is Booths Group's annual meeting?" I knew it was my fault for showing up in such a state outside the company's entrance, which could negatively impact the annual meeting being held today and bring a negative image to the company. However, I couldn't help being in the situation. But I knew, even if I said it, Jack wouldn't believe it. Moreover, after seeing the situation clearly, I learned to be obedient. I meekly curled up in the chair and said softly, "I'm sorry, Uncle." Seeing me calling him that way, Jack raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. I had always called him Jack. No matter how he corrected me, I stubbornly refused to call him Uncle. In my selfish mind, I thought this was the only luxury I reserved for myself, the only thing I insisted on. But now, it didn't matter anymore. Jack looked at me with a serious look, and after a long time, he smiled faintly. The training by the robbers really worked. You've finally given up those disgusting thoughts. However, the price was too cruel. If I had to do it all over again, I would rather die with my stepfather and mother. I don't want to have this life anymore. Jack didn't take me back to the Booths mansion, but instead brought me to a hotel. He looked at me disdainfully and said, "Emily, go clean yourself up first." I looked at Jack, impeccably clean, then glanced at my soiled self and numbly agreed. I walked towards the direction of the bathroom. Just a few steps ahead, I slipped. With a loud crash, I fell onto the carpet in the living room. I was so scared that I immediately knelt on the ground, begging for mercy. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to fall." To make Jack happy and get rid of those disgusting thoughts, and satisfy my own desires, the robbers did everything they could to torment me. They laid broken glass on the ground and forced me to walk on it. If I couldn't help but scream in pain or fell to the ground, they would insult me crazily. I was tormented to the point where I wished for death, begging them to spare me. But the robbers said, "Jack gave us twice the ransom to train you, this little slut," showing how much he despises you. "You, a wretch in the mud, dare to think about Booths Group's president. I bet you won't dare to have such filthy thoughts anymore." Kneeling in pain on the ground, that intense humiliation and fear resurfaced in my mind. I repeated incoherently, "I won't dare to have those filthy thoughts again, I really won't dare anymore." With a grim face, Jack looked at me kneeling on the ground. "What are you doing, Emily?" Jack's voice startled me, gradually bringing me back to my senses. Jack was extremely angry. "Emily, don't pretend to be crazy or stupid in front of me to gain my sympathy." My face turned pale, and I stood up shakily. Jack continued, "You're really despicable like this." I looked at him and said very seriously, "You're right, I am indeed too despicable." Jack was stunned by my words, then sneered, "Emily, you've learned to retreat wisely." I respectfully lowered my head and, under Jack's gaze, slowly moved towards the bathroom. The hotel was a property of the Booths, and everything had been prepared in advance. After cleaning up and dressing neatly, I chose the most conservative black dress from the hanger to cover the scars all over my body. After tidying up, I walked out of the bathroom. The room manager, who had been waiting outside, was amazed to see that I had handled everything myself. I looked at her and couldn't help but laugh sarcastically. I used to think that as the Booth's stepdaughter, raised by Jack for so many years, I was different from others. But now after this experience, I realized that all those thoughts were just my self-flattery. In Jack's eyes, I was never special. I was only a tool he used to boast the kindness of the Booths. I returned to the living room, where Jack was sitting on the sofa waiting for me, wearing a fresh shirt and suit. Seeing me come out, Jack looked at me, sneering, "Emily, who are you dressing up like this for?" I squeezed my fingers, unable to explain. Jack saw me not saying anything and said coldly, "Your previous appearance is already trending. I'll take you to the Booths Group's annual meeting later, and you have to cooperate with me to cover up today's scandal." I asked hoarsely, "How do you want me to cooperate?" Jack paused for a moment, then warned sternly, "Emily, this whole mess started because of you, so it's only right that you clean it up yourself. Don't forget, you were raised by us." I obediently nodded. He raised me, so I was responsible for setting things right today. After this, there would be no debts between me and the whole family. Seeing me nod, Jack glanced at me coldly and walked away. I followed behind him. As we reached the doorway, my eyes scanned the trash can inside were the shirts and suits that Jack had just changed out of. Because I had touched them, he threw them away. As I stepped out of the door, Jack was already standing at the elevator door, with a woman beside him. "Jack, don't be mad. Emily probably didn't realize today was the company's annual meeting. She didn't anticipate the controversy it would bring," the woman said. She was Linda, Jack's secretary, who had taken out my cherished diary and tried to convince Jack to use the robbers to make me give up my absurd thoughts. Linda, in her elegant dress, stood beside Jack and comforted him in a gentle voice, making them look like a perfect match. This made me appear even more petulant and unreasonable. Jack snorted as if I were cunning and said, "She's not a 3-year-old. How could she not realize the trouble it would cause showing up like this at the company's doorstep?" I pursed my lips and remained silent, quietly trailing behind them into the elevator during the time when I was kidnapped by the robbers. They would lock me in a metal box when they rested. They would also put all kinds of terrifying and disgusting creatures in the box to scare me. So as soon as I entered the elevator, I felt suffocated and overwhelmed with fear all over my body. I huddled in a corner of the elevator, trying to restrain my fear. Linda's eyes flashed with mockery as she stood gracefully beside Jack. When the elevator doors finally opened, I hurriedly pushed my way out and leaned against the wall on the opposite side, gasping for breath. With a look of concern, Linda approached me and whispered softly in my ear, "Emily, what's wrong? Are you still in love with Jack?" Her words were like a switch, and I immediately knelt on the ground, knocking my head crazily. I dare not love him anymore. Truly I dare not. Please don't lock me in the box again. Jack's face darkened slightly, showing a mixture of shock, confusion, and a hint of pity. "Emily, what's wrong with you?" I blankly looked up at Jack. His face went from blurry to clear, then back to blurry, just like my feelings over the years. I loved someone, but I never even thought about being with him. I just kept this love carefully hidden in my heart. Yet, when he found out about my feelings, he paid double the ransom to the robbers to make me give up my love for him. That's why I dare not love anymore. Standing up unsteadily, I spoke with a hoarse voice, "I'm sorry, Jack." Jack looked at me awkwardly, as if he wanted to say something more. Linda's voice rang out, scolding, "Emily, what are you doing? There are so many people in the hotel lobby, you will cause trouble for Jack." At Linda's words, Jack's expression immediately turned cold and distant. After giving me a deep look, he walked away without looking back. His departing figure of resolve resembled the day he paid double the ransom to have the robbers re-educate me. I was brought to the annual meeting. As soon as I entered, countless speculative gazes fell on me. My throat tightened, and I quickly found a corner with fewer people to shrink into. Jack's sister, my younger Aunt Amy, approached me. Amy, who usually didn't like me, surprisingly sat down next to me. She seemed hesitant to speak, but after a while, she said slowly, "Emily, I heard from Linda that Jack paid double the ransom to the robbers." Her voice grew quieter. I smiled faintly and said nothing. After a moment of silence, Amy continued, "Do you still like my brother?" I shook my head vigorously, as if trying to shake Jack out of my world. Amy slumped in her chair, looking dejected. She said, "I used to argue with you all the time because Jack was too good to you. I was jealous. I know that he truly likes you, but it's just this status that he refuses to acknowledge. Whether Jack likes me or not is no longer important to me. I am completely afraid to love." Amy held my hand and asked, "If one day Jack regrets it, would you give him another chance?" Watching Jack mingling effortlessly in the banquet hall, I shook my head even more vigorously. I would never entangle myself with Jack again in this lifetime. Amy sighed and took out a bank card from her bag. "This is the inheritance left for you by my elder brother and your mother, which has been kept by me." I secretly held on to this card because I was angry that you and your mother bewitched my two elder brothers. Trembling, I reached out and accepted the card, tears streaming down my cheeks. I realized that my stepfather and mother had long ago set aside a security for me. I actually had money to pay the ransom. How ridiculous. After handing me the card, Amy left with a desolate look on her face. I sat alone in my seat. Before long, Jack came over to Mayhay had just been lively and confident at the banquet. Now, he stood before me with an air of authority, instructing, "Linda will clarify things for you later on stage. Just shift the blame onto yourself during media interviews. Once this is over, I will send you abroad to relax. When the dust settles, I will bring you back." I obediently nodded, "Okay, I'll follow your lead, Jack." Jack hesitated for a moment, his face showing a mix of emotions as he asked, "Why are you being so compliant today?" I smiled and replied, "Everything I have is from you. Isn't it natural to do as you say?" Jack scrutinized me carefully and said with a complex expression, "Don't worry, I won't abandon you." I clenched my fists, trying hard not to lose composure. "Jack, once this is settled, we will be even. No more debts between us." Frowning, Jack asked, what do you mean by that? Feeling the subtle curious gazes around me, I lowered my head and trembled as I said, after this is over today, I want to move out of the house. Annoyed, Jack growled softly, Emily, what are you up to? I warn you, don't try anything to attract my attention. You and I, it's completely impossible. Don't have any more vile thoughts about me. Meanwhile, on the stage, the host didn't know what had been said, and Linda stepped up with a gentle smile, explaining, as the spokesperson for Jack Group, I want to clarify the news that happened today. Due to some disputes, Emily was kidnapped by robbers. Thanks to Jack paying double the ransom, Emily was redeemed. Booth's Group sincerely requests all media friends to understand that she is just a young girl who has been through a lot and will start anew. Please forgive her. I grasped my sleeve, staring blankly at this scene. The sound of everyone's discussions reached my ears. Jack was truly righteous. Clearly, Emily was just a stepdaughter with no blood relation, yet he not only raised her for so many years but also worked tirelessly to save her by paying double the ransom. People were saying Emily was in the wrong and deserved what happened. She was restless and got what she deserved. They didn't know that Emily had secretly developed feelings for Jack. Her diary was even exposed online, so shameless. I stood frozen in place, trembling all over. Those words seemed to pierce my mind, echoing repeatedly in my ears. The scene of being brutally tortured by robbers because of liking my step-uncle flashed in my mind once again. I opened my mouth, as if to say something. But then, a click sounded, and the evening dress fell to the ground. My body, covered in bruises, was now exposed in front of everyone without any concealment. I anxiously grabbed the dress, only to find it completely ruined. I could never wear it again. Countless scornful and mocking gazes fell upon me. Shaking violently, I felt dizzy waves hitting my brain. The next moment, I fainted on the ground. In the darkness, it seemed like I had returned to the past. After my stepfather and mother had died in a car accident, I had no relatives left in this world. I thought I would be left alone and destitute. But after the funeral ended, Jack stood before me. He said he would take care of me from then on. In that moment, Jack became my redemption. Later, this redemption became my only hope. I buried my feelings haphazardly, afraid of sullying the light of my love. Over the years, Jack had taken care of me dutifully. He pampered me just like a little princess. Whatever I wanted, he would provide for me. My love for him grew stronger, but with nowhere to express it, I could only write this love in my diary, locked away in my bookcase. I looked at the moon countless times and made wishes, hoping for days like this to last longer and longer. Until that night. It was Jack's birthday. He was out socializing and had some drinks. When he came back, he was so drunk he could barely walk straight. The maid at home had something urgent to attend to and wasn't there. I had to help Jack into the house by myself. I was going to put him on the bed and leave, but as soon as I set him down, Jack pulled me into his arms. He rolled over and pinned me down, whispering my name, Emily, my Emily, in a drunken haze. My mind exploded like fireworks as Jack's lips trailed across my body. The next morning, Jack was not by my side when I woke up. I dressed shyly and went back to my room. Shortly after, Linda called. Emily, Jack wants you to go to the bridal shop to try on wedding dresses. I happily hung up the phone, full of happiness, and rushed to the bridal shop. But what awaited me there was endless torture and abuse. I begged the hostage takers to let me make a call and recited Jack's number by heart, hoping that Jack could rescue me from the fire. After a conversation, Jack's icy words came through the phone, I'll pay you double ransom. The only condition is to make Emily give up her disgusting thoughts about me. Desperate, I cried, trying to stop everything, wanting to ask why. But the phone was hung up without hesitation, hitting me hard in the heart. The kidnappers smirked as they walked towards me, tearing my clothes viciously, leaving dirty marks on me that couldn't be washed away. Is Jack interested in a woman like you? Look at your pathetic self, not even worthy to carry Jack's shoes. If you dare to have such filthy thoughts, I'll post photos and videos of you enjoying yourself under us on various websites. The scene changed again. I saw my videos posted on various websites, and countless disdainful and mocking eyes fell on me. Jack stood among the crowd, looking at me with disgust. I opened my mouth to explain that it wasn't what it seemed, but I couldn't say a word. Just as I was desperate, a spotlight shone on me, only to realize Linda was looking at me mockingly. I looked down and realized I wasn't wearing any clothes. Covered in bruises that couldn't be washed off, I was exposed in front of everyone. I couldn't contain myself and screamed in horror. The next moment, I gasped for breath as I opened my eyes. All I saw was pure white, with a faint smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. Jack rushed to the window, looking at me with concern. "How are you?" I saw him, my pupils dilated, memories flooding my mind. I jumped out of bed in a panic, running towards the hospital room as if I were crazy. Jack grabbed me, saying, "Emily, it's me, Jack." Trembling in fear, I wanted to bite my tongue off. But nurses and doctors came promptly, pinning me to the bed and giving me a sedative injection. I convulsed on the bed, my vision blurred. Jack watched in shock, asking Leo, "What's wrong with her?" Leo helped me onto the bed and said gravely, "Emily has suffered severe abuse and assault. She's been badly hurt." Jack looked at me in pain, repeating over and over, "How could this happen? How could this happen?" Leo looked at me sympathetically and turned to Jack, advising him not to agitate me as my mental state was unstable. After a while, when the sedative wore off, I opened my eyes and saw Jack sitting by the bed. Seeing me awake, he nervously asked, "You're awake? How are you feeling?" He rambled on, "I never expected things to turn out like this. I just wanted them to make you give up thoughts of me. I never thought they would treat you like this, even though I paid double ransom. I paid double ransom, but the condition was for them to brainwash me and make me stop loving you. So isn't my situation now expected?" Seeing me silent, Jack quickly brought out a tray of soup, saying, "I had the maid make your favorite soup. Try it." He hurriedly served me a bowl of soup with tomatoes floating on top, bright red, almost like it carried a hint of blood. It seemed to remind me of the past injuries. The scenes of bloodshed flashed in my mind. Unable to control myself, I pushed the bowl away, collapsing to the floor and vomiting uncontrollably. Coughing until the end, the metallic taste of blood sprayed out of my mouth and nose. Jack's lips trembled, and he panicked, calling for Leo. Leo gently treated me after the incident. After the treatment, Leo instructed Jack to stay away from me for the next 2 days. Jack, with a pained expression, stood by the bedside, unwilling to leave. In the midst of hesitation, Linda appeared out of nowhere. "Jack, the shareholders from the company are waiting for you to lead the meeting," Linda said. Jack glanced at me, forced a smile, and said, "Emily, take care and rest. I'll handle the company's affairs and come back to be with you." "Don't worry, I will take responsibility for this matter," Jack reassured before hastily following Linda out. As I watched them disappear from my view, I couldn't help but gasp for air. Suddenly, my phone made a notification sound. I checked and saw a text message from an unknown number. The message contained a screenshot of a video showing me being humiliated by the robbers. Below the image, a sentence read, "Do you remember how we trained you?" Terrified, I stuffed my phone under the pillow, helpless, and cried. I knew the robbers were threatening me. To prove that I no longer loved Jack, I changed into hospital clothes overnight, sneaked away from the duty nurse, and quietly ran to the stairwell. As I breathed a sigh of relief and proceeded downstairs, I saw Leo standing at the corner, looking lost in thought. My entire body shuddered. I quickly turned back, but Leo, quick to react, caught me. "What are you trying to do, Emily? Your body hasn't fully recovered yet," Leo said anxiously. "You've mistaken me for someone else. I am not Emily." Leo gazed at me intently and asked, "What happened to you?" Overwhelmed, I knelt before him and pleaded, "Please, Leo, pretend you didn't see me, or I'm done for. Jack paid double the ransom for the robbers to mistreat me. They have a video of me. If I stay here, I'm finished," I explained desperately. Leo, with a tight-lipped and sympathetic look, urged me to take off my clothes, expressing concerns for my well-being. Hesitantly, I complied. Leo turned away, blushing. "I'll pretend I didn't see." But you must come to my place, so I can take care of you. It'll be a safe haven, and no one will suspect you're here. Confused, I asked why he was helping me. Leo, with a meaningful look, urged me to follow him, saying, "Let's go." He led me to his home, where he arranged for me to stay in his room. Leo explained that he would sleep on the sofa in the living room to take care of my health until I recovered. I felt guilty for intruding but didn't know how to repay him. Leo declined my offer of a bank card and revealed himself, saying, "Do you remember me, Emily?" His familiar face triggered memories. Leo was the neighbor living next to my house before my mother remarried and we lost contact. Leo shared, "Emily, don't feel obliged. I'm glad to help you in any way I can." Blushing, he hastily left the room. Thanking Leo, I finally relaxed and lay down on the bed, closing my eyes and surrendering to darkness. When I woke up, I heard the sound of a door locking outside, sending a chill of fear down my spine. Who could it be? The robbers? Or Jack? Either way, they were people I needed to avoid at all costs. I panicked and hid in the closet, curled up in a ball, uncontrollably trembling. "Emily." I heard the familiar voice, and the closet door opened. Leo knelt in front of me reassuringly, "Don't be afraid, it's me." But seeing the spilled vegetables and fruits on the floor and Leo's worried expression, I couldn't contain my fear and burst into tears, throwing myself into his arms. Leo comforted me until I stopped shaking, then gently carried me out of the closet. He explained carefully that I had slept for a long time and he was worried I would wake up hungry, so he went to buy groceries to cook for me. I stayed in his arms and cried softly. Emily tried to comfort me, "Don't cry, I cook really well." His words made me smile, and Emily immediately relaxed, saying, "Trust me, I'll cook for you. I promise you'll want more after this meal and never leave me again." Blushing, I looked at him, and Emily suddenly realized what he had said. With his ears turning red, he made an excuse about forgetting to buy spices and dashed downstairs. I couldn't help but laugh. The doorbell rang, and I saw the keys left on the bed by Emily, so I went to open the door without much thought. To my surprise, it was Jack's secretary, Linda. She carried a fruit basket, wearing delicate makeup, and when she saw me, she smiled brightly, asking, "How is Emily recovering?" I couldn't believe it and asked, "How do you know I'm here?" Linda smirked and said, "As long as the money is right, anything can be done. Like a dress that can break at any time, or like getting a certain diary locked in a bookshelf. You can even hire some robbers to get rid of those who bother me." Shocked, I widened my eyes and exclaimed, "So those robbers, you hired them?" Linda looked at me disdainfully and said, "Who made you not only look at Jack but also dared to get into his bed? He can only belong to me. This is my punishment for you. Get away from me now, never show up in Jack's sight again. Otherwise, I'll release a video of you enjoying yourself among the robbers on various websites. Then let's see if you still have the face to live in this world." Trembling all over, I stood there shivering, then let out a scream and rushed at Linda, tearing at her frantically. Linda screamed as I scratched her, and she grabbed the fruit basket to hit me. Leo had just returned and saw me struggling with Linda. He quickly separated us, pushing Linda out of the room. Linda stumbled and fell to the ground in pain. Leo held me in his arms, looking at her with hatred in his eyes. At the same time, Jack appeared at the door. He looked at me and Leo, his face darkening noticeably, and said, "Emily, come here." I shuddered and shrank back. Leo's large hand immediately patted my back comfortingly. Linda immediately added fuel to the fire. "Emily is amazing, she even managed to seduce Leo while she was missing." Jack's face grew even darker, and he reached out to grab me but was blocked by Leo. "Jack, she doesn't want to go with you." Jack sneered, "You dare to call her that way too?" I held onto my sleeve tightly, gritting my teeth and said, "I have already cleared up the news for the company and don't owe you anything. I just want to stay here now. I hope you won't disturb me again." Jack stubbornly looked at me, thinking I was just playing with my identity. He didn't believe that I really didn't love him anymore. Linda deliberately stood up and stumbled because of her foot, letting out a whimper. Jack helped her up, turned to me coldly, and said, "Emily, I hope you won't regret what you did today." Then he picked up Linda and walked towards the elevator. I collapsed into Leo's arms, intending to smile but ended up showing a smile uglier than crying. The person who kidnapped me was Linda. She still had my video. Leo frowned, then gently comforted me. "Take care of yourself, I'll handle this." Ashamed, I said, "Leo, today's events may end up implicating you." Leo kindly said, "It's okay, I'm not afraid. Being able to protect you is my honor." I looked at him complicatedly, and he lifted my chin, looking at me firmly. "It's a great honor." My heart skipped a beat, and looking at Leo right in front of me, I couldn't help but tiptoe and kiss him. Leo trembled all over, slightly turned to avoid me. I lowered my head in shame, about to turn and hide inside the house, but Leo grabbed me. I mumbled apologetically with my head down, "Sorry, Leo, I was out of line. Someone like me shouldn't." Before I could finish, Leo silenced me with a kiss. Much later, he gasped for breath and gently held my face. "Emily, do you know how hard it was for me to hold back? I thought I had missed my chance with you until that day at the hospital when I saw you shattered in front of me. I wanted nothing more than to hold you in my arms right then and there." I stared at him wide-eyed. Leo tenderly embraced me, his eyes filled with intense affection. "Leo, I've actually been fond of you for a long time," I whispered. I slept exceptionally well that night. There were no terrifying robbers or suffocating Jack in my dreams. When I woke up, I found it was already noon the next day. There was a note from Leo on the table, telling me to stay home and wait for him. My heart swelled with warmth as I obediently stayed indoors, listening to his words. But soon, there was a puff of smoke outside. Someone shouted, "Fire, fire! Run for your lives!" I opened the door to see what was happening, only to be pulled into a hug the next second. Surrounded by that familiar scent, I instinctively tensed up. Jack held me tightly in his arms and said, "Emily, come back home with me." I looked at him quietly. "I won't go back with you, Jack." His eyes were red with sorrow. "Emily, I regret it. That night, I did have some drinks, but I wasn't drunk. I was a coward. I took advantage of you but couldn't admit I had fallen in love with you. I blamed it all on you as a mistake. Emily, please give me another chance, okay? I can't live without you. This time, I will cherish you properly." I looked expressionless at him and softly said, "How can I give you another chance, Jack?" I happily went to the bridal shop that day, thinking I would meet the love of my life, but instead, I walked into hell. Since then, I have been too afraid to love you again. Jack, we really have no chance. I've fulfilled your wish by completely avoiding these thoughts. Could you please fulfill mine and stop disturbing my new life? Jack turned pale, unable to control the trembling in his hands as he held mine tightly. Emily, I can't believe you've forgotten me so quickly in this short time. Indeed, it's impossible to forget someone in such a short time. But Jack forgot that he hired robbers to train me with double the ransom. If Linda hiring robbers to help me was despicable, then Jack deciding to have me trained by them with double the ransom is unforgivable. He made me feel even more disgusted than Linda ever did. He mocked Jack to his face. "I can forget you. Isn't that what you explicitly ordered? I've forgotten you because of the robbers' training. So why do you keep pestering me endlessly?" Jack's eyes were filled with pain. "Emily, I regret it. I've loved you for a long time. When you stood alone in front of the tombstone years ago, with that lonely and stubborn look, you somehow opened my heart. Unconsciously, I decided to take care of you. These years, you've silently loved me while I suppressed my feelings. I was just too cowardly to face my own heart. Emily, don't leave, stay and let me love you properly." I looked at Jack, full of remorse, and resolutely pushed away his hand, running back. Jack forcefully grabbed my hand, his eyes red with despair as he cried out, "Emily, don't go." I firmly pried open his hand, not even turning back as I ran back into the house. Smoke filled the room, making me cough violently. I picked up the note Leo left me and rolled it into a ball, hiding it in the cupboard. "I'll wait for you, Leo, brother." Just as I was about to lose consciousness, a familiar voice rang out. Leo appeared before me like a god, his face pale as he embraced me tightly. I obediently pressed against his chest, feeling his heart beating frantically, as if telling me how scared he was of losing me. "Emily, you're such a fool. You scared me just now. Why didn't you run?" I nestled tightly into his arms and whispered, "You told me to wait for you at home, so I couldn't leave. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to find me when you came back." Leo shuddered and then hugged me tightly. "I'll take you out." I nodded vigorously, holding onto Leo's neck tightly. "Let him lead me wherever, to live or to die." Leo led me out of the building, where the fire truck was already conducting a rescue operation. Jack sat in distress at the entrance of the building. When he saw us coming out, his expression of grief deepened. Leo comforted me with a pat on the back and walked over to Jackie. "Have reported Emily's kidnapping to the police. Even if you think you can cover it up, the law will prevail," Leo said sternly. "You knew that Linda has been enamored with you for a long time, yet you kept her around, causing her jealousy to lead to Emily being kidnapped by the criminals. You not only let her love turn into jealousy but also allowed her to manipulate your ridiculous emotions and let those scoundrels trample on her. You are not worthy of being called a man, let alone standing in front of her. You can now wait for the punishment from the law for you and Linda." As soon as he finished speaking, a police car pulled up to the building entrance. 2 officers walked up to Jack and said, "Jack, you are suspected of being involved in a kidnapping case. Please cooperate with our investigation." Jack was handcuffed and took a few steps, then he broke free and stood in front of me. His eyes were full of pleading. "Emily, please don't leave. May truly regret it." I whispered, "Unless time can turn back, I will never forget the suffering you caused me." Leo gently embraced me, his eyes filled with compassion. We shared a smile. Jack let out a mournful cry and was dragged away by the police. Epilogue: the police quickly solved the case. Linda was sentenced to death, and Jack was sentenced to 10 years. Leo quietly told me the outcome of the trial and added, "Jack revealed all the details, determined to see Linda pay for her crimes. He refused the lawyer the company hired for him and confessed to all his crimes in court, even requesting a harsher sentence from the judge." Leo looked at me with a complex expression and said, "He's trying to atone for his mistakes towards you." I hugged him tightly and said, "What he did was his own doing, just facing the consequences. It doesn't concern me anymore how he is now." Leo smiled affectionately at my words. "Who said it has anything to do with you?" I blinked and playfully pounced on him. "Of course, it's Leo." They held each other tightly. The girl teased, "You still haven't told me when you fell in love with me." The boy chuckled softly. "If I said, it was love at first sight from the very beginning." Their figures intertwined, and all the tender feelings turned into the blooming rose by the window, full of joy.